You looked at the lecture outline with regard to linguistic relativity. Now, in this part of the lecture, we will look specifically at the article The Shapir-Whorf Hypothesis Today by Basil Hussein, along with considering some examples of how language may influence our own perceptions or shape our thoughts, either consciously or subconsciously. In the lecture outline, you learned that linguistic relativity and the Shapir-Whorf hypothesis tells us that language influences and shapes our reality and the way we may perceive the world around us, because words and their categories help to shape our thoughts and cognitive processes. The concept of linguistic relativity reminded me of a conversation I once had with a friend who is a clinical psychologist. During this conversation I had with her, she stated to me that she believed that humans basically amount to only the biochemical reactions found within our brain. This did not settle well with me as it challenged my ideas with regard to us being able to transcend our physical embodiment. Essentially, that maybe we are spiritual beings having a physical experience versus physical beings having spiritual experiences. So I told her that I really didn't have a response to that, that I had to think about it and come back to her. So I did after the conversation for the next several days. I thought about this idea that maybe we are just simply the biochemical reactions that take place within us. But then I thought about cars, interestingly enough. Specifically, I thought about governors in a car. A governor limits the speed at which a car can go. And I thought, well, if you remove the governor, the car should potentially be able to go faster. Could our brains, therefore, be like governors in a car? The brain essentially, or the biochemical reactions within our brain, limits the potential of our souls, our consciousness, to perceive the reality and interact with the physical universe around us. So I went back to her to tell her my conclusions that I thought, well, maybe it is true partly that we are no more than the biochemical reactions of our brain. However, that I thought that these biochemical reactions don't completely define us, that we still transcend our physical embodiment. That if we could alter these biochemical reactions, if we could change them, we should be able to perceive reality completely different, or we should be able to expand our perceptions with regard to the universe around us. That essentially, that each individual has an infinite potential, and that these biochemical reactions that are found within each of us just simply shapes or limits how we use that potential and perceive the universe or interact with the universe or shapes the experiences that we are going to have within this life. I bring this up because linguistic relativity in a lot of ways reminds me about the debate that is had between the theoretical schools that say culture could be shaped a lot by nature versus culture is shaped a lot through learning. Or ask the question, how much does nature shape our culture versus how much it is through a symbolic learned process? And especially considering Noam Chomsky's idea of universal grammar that says that language ultimately is hardwired into our brains, and that language basically shapes our reality. I find myself asking the questions, can we transcend our language? Can we understand things that we may not have words for? What happens when there are no words or adequate categories of words to describe
or communicate the thoughts we have or what we are seeing in our minds or feeling? Is there a way for people of different languages to ultimately relate with each other and share the same reality space despite the differences in language?
These questions I ask you to consider as we continue.